in that it's nourishment. That this is, he talks about the bread of life, that this is what will feed and nourish the spiritual life. So that just takes itself directly from what it is that
absolutely
that bread does. But then you're right, he reverses it, right? Because the normal thing that happens when you eat something is that it undergoes a substantial change in your stomach and becomes you.
Yeah. In other words, you break it down, like you extract what it is for you. And instead, the Eucharist causes our Lord to come dwell in you and makes you more and more like him. It strengthens his presence in you. It feeds and nourishes it, and it changes you to become more like what, rather we should say whom, you are receiving. Hi there, welcome back to Closing the Social Distance. It's been really gratifying to realize that so many of our parishioners, young and old alike, have been enjoying these videos. It's been a pleasure getting to record them with you. The fulfillment of a long-held aspiration on our part.
Make it sound like we're almost done.
Well, I hope that we're almost done in the sense of this mode, as public masses resume, I hope that we can continue this as something that's a cool and awesome element of reaching out to people, but I look forward to being able to see people in the flesh a little more, to actually closing that social distance. But this has been pretty awesome in the meantime, and I'm glad for it. But one of the most gratifying things is reading comments and getting notes. So, for example, some of our most faithful commenters on Flocknote and YouTube, aside from my mother,
Carol Steffen and Kathy Steffen, there,
and my sister, and my Aunt Martha, who has a great devotion to cows, as I mentioned in an earlier video. My mom did threaten to kill me, by the way, after the video about her calligraphy the other week. So that is good to know that I was accurate.
She's not proud of her calligraphy.
Oh, I don't think she is. I think she always sees all the flaws, and I think she shouldn't see all the flaws. But she did vigorously disagree with you as to whether or not she wanted me back in California with her. She says, we always want Father Henry back in California.
She put that on YouTube.
I know, just to shame you, to indicate how, down there. But we have some great other comment. Kevin Lynch is such a faithful commenter, as is Caroline Isaacs. Yes, we do read them. And so many other great parishioners have written things, have poked at us, have just said a kind word. Occasionally not so kind a word, but almost always something really helpful, and so we always appreciate it. It always touches us. But the other day, I received an email from the intrepid, the one, the only Cindy Wurzelbacher, at whose name I think we should bow. I'm going to go ahead and add her to Ambrose, Dabrosi, and a few others. So we will bow at the name of Cindy. You aren't going to bow? Cindy, I'm sorry. I bow for your name, even if Father Clement doesn't. But you see, Cindy has been doing hard work like all of our staff members. I'm just ignoring.
It's nothing against Cindy.
It feels like it's something against Cindy.
No,
it feels like it's something against Cindy.
It's all against him.
And if you're against me, they're against you. Just remember that. Don't think about it too hard. Just go with it. So it's not logic, but it's passion. So there we go. So Cindy, who has been working hard to stay in touch and to keep our religious education, our catechesis going strong, she got a response from one of the second graders whom she had been emailing, and he has a great name. You know what his name is? It's Henry. It's a great name. So I salute you, Henry. Thank you for asking the question. You have a very substantial name. It's a name I hope you grow into well. But Henry asked this question, which we thought was great, and therefore we wanted to discuss it on Closing the Social Distance today. Why do we eat Jesus? He could have chosen to be close to us in other ways. For example, we could touch him with our hand or just be near him. Why does he want us to eat his body? Now, for a second grader, this is a very perspicacious question. I think that's an awesome question. And so I am grateful, Henry. So thank you for writing in with that. And if any of the other second graders or other ages, young or old, want to ask a question, send it on in. We don't just have to wait for Father Keller, Father anything, to ask him.
Yeah. Although I'd be happy to have another episode.
I agree. I've enjoyed our Ask Father Anything episodes. So
I've been threatening to have an Ask Father Anything live stream.
That would be so intense. It would be kind of like we would cease to be Regis and Kathy Lee, and we would move into live. Not live.
That's the name.
No. I know that's the name of that show. I just forgot. Larry King Live.
No.
So you would need suspenders. So caller from Madeira, you're on the line. You get a chance to do that. You didn't watch Larry King Live?
I watched Larry King Live.
Everyone watched Larry King Live. I tried to count the dots behind him a few times. It was impossible.
I wondered then, and I still wonder now, whether that microphone on his desk was the microphone we were listening to.
An audio person would ask himself that kind of question. I think it was decorative after a certain point, but I don't know. Maybe it wasn't. But with due homage to Larry King and our possibility of Ask Father Anything, let's go back to Henry's question. These are days of Eucharistic hunger, after all, and it stands to reason it's kind of odd that our Lord would choose to make us not only desire to see him, to touch him, to know him, but to eat him in the sacrament. And it's what we're all looking forward to being able to share again soon. So why do you think Jesus told us to eat his flesh and drink his blood?
So I think the first point is that why questions when it comes to things that Jesus actually enacted, there's a limitation in our ability to answer them, because sometimes there are particulars that they're particulars because they had to be some way or another, and that's the way that it had to be.
Sure.
And so we when we're answering a why question, what we're really saying is there a reason why it's fitting that the Lord chose to be this way? Because the answer really to why is, well,
because he said so.
Because he said so.
And because when you're the God-man, you get to determine these kind of things.
It's what he did. And there are other questions around that. For example, I think St. Thomas treats of the question of why is it bread and wine that we eat? Because while there's a certain symbolic value to being bread and wine as being the staples of the area where Christ was, but there are places where you can't even grow wine, and there are places where you don't eat bread. So why these things? And so I think the first part of the why is there are particulars that are just a given. It's what Christ did. And so
absolutely.
That's that.
The fittingness, though, which in other words means why is it particularly beautiful and appropriate and right that our Lord would choose to do this in a particular way? Why give us bread and wine as signs of his body and blood? Why would he want to eat us? Why have us eat him? It's because human beings need food to live, and the food that we eat changes us. It nourishes us, it gives us life. And it's such an incredibly intimate thing when you really think about it. You're putting things in you and you're extracting their energy. You're extracting, all the potency, if we want to get philosophical, from it. And that's a powerful thing. And yet with the Eucharist, it goes a step further, because it's what we eat makes us more like it rather than the other way around.
He plays with the symbol kind of in both directions often. And it's one of those cases too, where it's symbolic both in the way that the action that he's doing resembles the what he has chosen, and then in the way that it contrasts.
Yes.
So in the way that it resembles, in that it's nourishment. That this is, he talks about the bread of life, that this is what will feed and nourish the spiritual life. So that just takes itself directly from what it is that
absolutely
that bread does. But then you're right, he reverses it, right? Because the normal thing that happens when you eat something is that it undergoes a substantial change in your stomach and becomes you.
Yeah. In other words, you break it down, like you extract what it is for you. And instead, the Eucharist causes our Lord to come dwell in you and makes you more and more like him. It strengthens his presence in you. It feeds and nourishes it, and it changes you to become more like what, rather we should say whom you're receiving. And that is really cool. That's a powerful spiritual reality to the Eucharist. And I think Henry's question is right on, in the sense that he correctly notes that, implicitly in the question, that we are meant to see God as he is. Like, why don't we, it's sight, it's touch in a real sense. Like, we're meant in the resurrected body in heaven, we enjoy the fullness of the beatific vision, and we experience this overflow in all of our senses, of being in that perfect happiness of union with God. Here on earth, while we're still awaiting that fulfillment, while we're still, bearing in our bodies the mark of Christ's passion before we bear the mark of his resurrection more fully, we experience this as food for the journey, as manna in the desert, as, consolation and spiritual refreshment. And that is, it's not just food, it's not just a symbol. It is the reality of those things. It's that life of heaven in our souls. It's that nourishing of faith. Because the end of receiving Holy Communion, the purpose isn't just to receive Holy Communion. The purpose of receiving Holy Communion is to nourish that life of union with Jesus. Which is why even during these terrible days where people aren't able to receive Holy Communion as often as they would wish to or want to, it's not that their spiritual life has died or that they are no longer in union with Christ. It's that their hunger for deepening that union is growing stronger. And God willing, when we return, we'll be different. I pray that when we come back, things are different. And I don't mean, of course, everything will be different in a certain way. And then oftentimes when people say that, I hate it. Like, oh, we're not going back to normal. It's like, I kind of want to go back to normal. I don't know about you. I mean this in the positive sense. Like, from all of this, I hope that our churches are places of quiet prayer.
That are affected by this hunger.
Precisely. I hope that we ready ourselves to receive communion more and better. And that it's not just something that we go up as easily. Like this time of denial, this time of spiritual hunger, and sometimes even starvation. That as we re-enter that life of receiving our Lord, that we do it with the preparation and the thanksgiving, that's owed. Wouldn't it be awesome if at the end of Mass, instead of having a lot of conversation break out in church, if people knelt down and prayed in thanksgiving for this food they've just received, This
has been a fantasy of mine for a while.
It should be a fantasy. I mean, this is the reality. And this is not to deny the importance of our community as, a gathering, as a place where people come together and are nourished by that. And we've all been starving for that too. So it's not that we don't want friendships and a life of closeness. But I think if there's anything that we've come to realize from all of this, with this terrible situation, it's that we need to have that deeper reverence and love for our Lord, and that every Holy Communion is a privilege, is a grace, is a gift that should transform the way the rest of our lives are led, the rest of our day, the rest of our week, month, year, however long it is until the next time we receive him.
I know we've gone on for a while, but I think it's also worth addressing the negative point that he makes. So yes. Why is it tasting? Why is it eating? But why is it not some other thing like touching
or
seeing? And I think my notion of this is that it's to talk about the kind of intimacy that we're talking about, the kind of relationship that we're talking about. When you're touching, this is a sign of closeness to that person, that the physical lack of distance is a symbol of how close it is that you feel.
Sure.
And so that would be a step closer than just seeing.
Sure.
Eating is actually talking about a whole different kind of closeness, because it's not just that Christ is with you, that Christ is near you. that Christ is friends with you. These things are all true, but we're going to go beyond that and say that you become Christ.
Yeah. No, I think that's very true. And I'm grateful to Henry and to all of our religious education and catechesis people and to our school children who have been watching this. We appreciate the tough times you all are going through, and we're grateful for the awesome questions as well as all the prayers that you send our way. And, on behalf of Father Clement and me, we're really looking forward to the day, and it looks like it may come soon when we'll be able to share in this banquet of the Lord's table, in this supreme and beautiful feast that anticipates the heavenly wedding banquet. But until then, we are praying for you, so make sure to keep praying for us. From Father Clement and myself, we'll talk to you soon, and we'll see you next time on Closing the Social Distance.